Okay, this would be part 3, I guess. We're moving on to the build of the head. The head has lit LED eyes as well as a moving mouth function. This is the head. And the head prints upside down on your printer in this position, and I do allow it to. It doesn't really need it, I guess. But I do remember pulling supports out of there, so I guess I let it go ahead and generate supports in there. But everything about this, with the exception of that one hole, yeah, that was the deal. I ran supports around that hole. Everything else comes all the way to the bed and is curved in such a way that it should print without support. So you have to do it for that hole. There's this piece of linkage, which of course prints flat, no supports. And you're going to want to file or sand to make sure you get all of the rough bits or hard parts off of that, because in the end it slides down into this slot into the top here, and it has to be able to freely move up and down. If that hangs up on anything, then the mouth function isn't going to work. I'm trying to remember the order that we need to do this in. I think we put the mouthpiece in first. Now the mouth prints on your printer in this position, and I run supports for this cutout area to make sure that that stayed clear, and then broke that out afterwards. I painted this cut-in part black just to add some difference, so there's some, it looks different when it's moving. And you can see that's going to go into the head, I believe, in that position. And there is a pin that's going to go from one side of the head to the other for that mouth to rotate on. Again, this is an 1/8 inch steel rod. You could use brass rod, you could use plastic rod, you could use aluminum, whatever you've got. In the land of metrics, that would be about 3.12 or 3 millimeter. But as far as the length goes, I'm sitting right at about 38 millimeters long, which would be 1.5 inches long for us. I'm going to try to drop the mouth down into its slot and then run the rod from side to side if I can. I'm not really 100% sure that I have it in the right direction, but I think I do. I'm going to put a little bit of, in my case I like to use the E6000. I'm going to put a little bit of that on the end of the rod just to keep it in the head when it's in place. The rod isn't going to want to move on its own, but you wouldn't want it falling out and then have to try and take the head apart to find what you have to do to fix it. Wet your finger if you're going to touch where the E6000 is, and it won't stick to you. There we go. Alright, that looks like it's in place. Then we're going to take the linkage part, we're going to drop it in there, but we got to rotate the mouth in such a way that cutout area that we talked about, I think we want it all the way up so that we can engage these fingers with that cutout part. So as we pass this down in there, yep, that's what we got to do. We can see that they're starting to engage. There we go. So now, as their lever down on the body moves, that should move the mouth. Now, to keep that from going too far and getting away, there's this piece which prints vertically like this on your computer. It's a little U-shaped piece. It's going to clip around the top of that. And to be completely honest, I don't remember exactly how far it has to go, but I believe you can judge just by the mouth movement. By the time it goes all silver, that's one position, in black, something like that. And probably should put some sort of glue or something on that. So they wouldn't have to worry about that ever falling out, even though it has a nice snug fit to it. I'm not wanting to glue it permanently with like super glue or with the preferred weld-on 16, which is very permanent since it melts the PLA. So I'm just going to go on to the back side of it here and just kind of tack it with a little bit of the E6000. That way, if I really don't like where I put it, if I think I'm limiting mouth action or something, I can cut that out and get it out of the way. There is a top of the head flat square piece. We're not putting that on now, but the point is, when the time comes, that's just going to glue on top to seal the head off. Okay, for the eyes, I had a bunch of these jumbo LEDs. These are white. They're wired in parallel, which means if you have your two positive leads, solder them together, your two negative leads, solder them together, then off one of the leads, it doesn't matter which one. I'm using a 330 ohm resistor as my current limiter because I don't need these super bright. I just want them to light, and I don't want to waste a bunch of milliamps of power on them. I took a little bit of black paint and did a pupil type effect, which was a popular thing to do on the vintage toys from the 1950s and 1960s especially. They liked doing that. I thought it might make it look a little cooler. But these are going to now pop in from the inside, and once they're in place, you could use hot melt glue, or in my case, since I've got the E6000 sitting here, that's what I'm going to do. Oh, to solder them up and get them spaced right, I put them on the outside because it's easier to work with them here. So sit them in their holes, bring the legs over and solder everything up. So use this as a soldering jig, as long as you don't drip any solder on your face of your robot and screw up its looks. And maybe it'd be easier to fish these in with needle nose. I don't know. We're going to find out. I'll try the needle nose effect and we'll see. I'm going to tip them a little, get them in place. Yeah, that's going in place. Then once they're sort of there, we should be able to push on them till they feel like they're seated. Main thing is I want them both to look even. I don't really care how far they go, as long as they both look about the same. So that doesn't look too bad. If you don't want them bugging out that much, push them in further. But I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of E6000 in between the LED and the PLA printed head part, so that if someone does push on them looking at them, that they don't drop back inside and make you have to cut the top of the robot's head off to fix things. Again, you could just use hot melt glue if that's what you've got around and like to use. Another little glob for the other side. I'm going to move that resistor out of the way so I don't get glue all over it. There we go. So I just kind of glooped a little on either side, as you can see. Once that sets up, that should hold them quite nicely. You shouldn't have to worry about them anyway. Now back in part 2 of the build, we tucked the motor, the main power wires which went to the motor, I tucked them up in the head. Well, I folded them both flat. If they were super long, you could cut them shorter, twist them back together. I folded them both up flat and soldered 2 points so I can hook them onto the LEDs when the time comes. And time has almost come. Wires are gonna pass through this little hole here. This is hopefully going to rest on the mechanical part down inside. So at this point we can actually kind of do a test fit. Pass those wires up Just kind of test fit to make sure everything is fitting together like we hoped. So, this with the robot in the down position, you can activate this lever by hand, which not only moves the hand, but if we have things set up right, then that should be activating the mouth as well. So the mouth is black right now when he's sitting, and then as the arm comes up, it turns all silver and closed. I'll hold the arm up out of the way and you can kind of see what the effect is. So that's all working. So what we're going to want to do now that we know that that all works is actually glue the head down in place. And I'm trying to decide what the best way to do that is, because we got to poke these wires back through. I'm thinking it might be less messy if we put the glue around this part, because then we can see that we make sure we're not getting it on anything we didn't want it on. And because this is a part that you do want to stay on permanently, again I would recommend using the weld-on number 16, because it will melt and fuse the parts together if they're printed in PLA. You won't have to worry about them coming apart for any reason. Okay. Let's feed our wires through. And shove the head down. I'm going to look at the back of the head versus the back of the body to try and get it as square as possible. There we go. Then basically I'm just going to solder those two wires onto the two LED wires. One LED wire which has the current sense resistor on it. In my case I know that's the positive. So that'd be my orange wire since I color coded it, and the green will go to the other one. And then the LEDs will get power anytime the motor's on. There is also a back panel to the robot, which I kind of had the raised text. You don't have to print it in two color. Basically I had it print the silver color, stop at a certain layer height, then I load it in black filament, it does the black part, then after it's done with that, switch back to the silver. But this will be held on, there's already holes here, using 6 number 2 tapping screws. Should screw right in there to seal off the back when we're all done. All these things add weight. When we get everything all together, then we'll have to do a check to make sure that the springs are still adequate for the job. Well, let's see here. Trying to decide which wire I should solder first. I think I'm going to move the 330 ohm resistor up out of the way and solder the ground wire to the LED, because that's the bottom in this case. And this isn't probably ready yet. Let's find out. Oh, it's ready. Good. You're going to want to make sure, however you do this, that your wires are in such a way that they can't interfere with the mouth linkage and movement inside the head. Alright, let's find out if the eyes light up. No, the eyes do not light up. So that means I do not have the polarity correct. Or I didn't get one of the wires soldered on. Take your pick. Or actually, I never tested these LEDs. Could be multiple problems. We'll try reversing the wires first though, because that would be the most common thing. It doesn't matter whether the resistor's on the positive wire or on the negative wire, as long as it's there to limit the current to the LEDs. Since with these 4 AA batteries that we're running this off of this time, we have about 6 volts. We only need about just a hair over 3 for white LEDs. Alright, let's see if that's any different. Oh yeah. We may have to make some adjustments to the springs, because he's getting a little bit stuck right there, see? But that's okay. I allowed for that adjustment down below, because there's going to be even more weight involved in this by the time that the back is screwed on and the top of the head is in place. You're going to add even more, so at that point you may want to do your final adjustments on the springs there. And the reason I know I can do some more adjustments on the springs, because if you look back in video 1 where we assembled the bottom, I put an extra hoop on the spring, so all I have to do is pull the rod back out, pull the extra hoop that I put on there out of the picture, and that's going to pull the spring tighter. I'll do it with a 1 foot first, and if that's not enough to make it stand, then I'll do it to the 2nd foot. I think between the 2 of them we'd probably get there. Now if everything inside here is happy, well, even if it's not, it's just a question of screws. Since the back screws on, it's certainly not a big deal to put it on and off. What I'm doing off camera now is grabbing 6 small number 2 self-tapping screws, and we'll try screwing this back panel on, so we can, because this is obviously a lot heavier than the top of the head. Two of the screws are in. Big fun watching somebody put in 6 screws, isn't it? Yeah, get your kicks where you can. I lost one. It's there. I didn't lose it. All right. And what I think I'm going to do is, just in case I ever have to get back up into that head, I think rather than gluing this top piece on with weld-on number 16 or super glue or anything permanent like that, I think I'm going to go ahead and just use the E6000, because that way if I ever have to, I can run a razor blade around the top, I can cut it loose, I can get back in the head to fix whatever went wrong. So it'll never come loose on its own, but you can always get it off if you had to. So I think I'll just dab a little bit of this around the edges, because it's just a flat top. It's not load worthy. It doesn't do anything other than finish off the cosmetic look of the robot. Isn't going to take much to hold it in place. Get the cap back on the E6000. We don't want it drying out. Get on there. Okay. There we go. Alright, I'll put a little bit of weight on there too, maybe, huh? Hold it down. Too much weight. Can't tell if I'm skewing it off center. Probably better just to leave it like that. Okay, what we're going to do is we'll stop the video here. I'll do a demo video, which you would have already seen if you're seeing this build video, of both robots in action, which means I will have adjusted the springs and this one for enough tension to work, and this one will have had time to glue so that I can handle it and turn it upside down and adjust the springs and all that good kind of stuff. So refer back to the demo video if you want to see the one that we just built in complete working action. But that's where we're at. The only thing I really had left to do is I wanted to cut some longer rods for these part of the knees so I can put the cosmetic caps on, and I know the rods will stay in place, and I want to adjust the springs for a little bit more pull so it can stand up properly. That will all be in the demo video.